I'm seeing it from 45-year-old men who are healing their inner 7-year-old. So when people think, oh, this is a bit far-fetched, Adam, it's fucking not. It's not.
It is not.
Until you can heal younger you by doing these kind of exercises and opening that door, it will set you free, because otherwise you're going to carry on and you're going to be at the same vulnerability level or lack of understanding around your emotional level as a 7-year-old, because that's what you're being controlled by, and that's why it's imperative.
I wasn't well then. I was just doing the best that I could. I was getting knee-jerked around by everything external. You just did the best you could at that time. That's it. And look at you are today. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong.
Yes, I've had to do quite a bit of that over the last 4 years of running a business.
Forgiveness.
Yeah, I did a post about it the other day, actually. There was a girl who I have known for a long time. This was at the start of my first coaching business before we formed A-Game. And she was going through a really tough challenges and what have you. And I got a phone call off her, and I thought, when you see someone's name appear and you're thinking, my name's Adam, it must be first in a phone book, this must be an accident or a pocket dial, because I get pocket dialed loads.
Yeah, so do I.
First contact in a lot of people's phones. So I answered, I was like, hello? She's like, I could hardly hear her. There was loads of wind like flying past me, and I was like, fucking hell. So where are you? She's like, I'm on the motorway. I was like, okay. I said, you all right? She's like, no, I'm going to throw myself in front of a car. I was like, fuck. I was like, what? So what do you mean? Anyway, it transpired that she'd been let go from a job because of COVID, been made redundant. She found out that her partner had been sleeping with somebody else for months on end, but she rang me. And obviously she's been seeing what I've been posting online in the last sort of few weeks and what have you around mental health and coaching, and me just starting out really in my journey around that. And she decided to ring me out of her family, her sister, her friends, her mum, and I calmed her down, got her to focus on her breath, got her back into the car. She contacted her sister, hunky-dory, thank you so much, great, no problem. Fast forward a couple of days, if you remember on my Instagram stories, I would do a picture of my porridge with Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin playing and a motivational quote. That's what I used to do. It might have been a bit daft for some people or didn't get it, but I was like, it's consistent and some people liked it and they look forward to it. Just to get messages around it. And she screenshotted it and sent it to me and said, oh my God, how can you fucking believe it? How embarrassing is this? He's tried to make it like a cafe, like Standard or whatever, basically ridiculing me. And I was thinking, she's not meant to send me this. She's meant to send it to somebody else taking the piss out of me. So I just put, oh dear, this wasn't for me, was it? Oh yeah, it was. I was just having a laugh, ha ha ha. And I thought, you ungrateful fuck. 2 days ago, I've talked you down from, I don't think she would have done it, but I've talked you down from potentially throwing yourself in front of a car on the motorway, and then now you're ridiculing me 2 days later to somebody else.
She's not well.
She wasn't at the time. But I'm nowhere near as self-aware then as I am now. Even then, I could create the empathy and the compassion and the understanding, because I've just got this burning desire to help people, and that's my standard. It's my standard to live life on my own terms. It's my standard to help others without expectation. Her standard was to receive help and then ridicule me for it. So on the forgiveness piece, I know I'm talking about it still, it doesn't ruin my day, and I'm only thinking about it because I talked about it on a podcast a few weeks ago when they said, what's one of the most challenging things you've had to encounter through the coaching process? And that was one of them.
Right.
So yeah, if I saw her in the street, I wouldn't walk up to her and give her a big hug or anything, because 10 minutes after she did that, she blocked me on everything. But then I also know that she saw someone that, a friend of mine a couple of weeks later and was mortified. So she knows what she did and she knows that she fucked up. I don't need to tell her that. When you're going through a difficult time, let's say you're in a toxic relationship now, or you've been in one, you've just exited it, you might have had abusive parents. The forgiveness isn't for them the forgiveness is for younger you or the former you, so you can evolve and you can move on. Because why would you want to carry that much hate and misery around with you like a dead weight your whole life?
Which is weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the opposite of that, isn't it? Because the weak can never forgive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you can't forgive, whether that's forgive someone else or forgive yourself, because there's forgiveness of oneself, then you must be carrying around hate, jealousy, bitterness. You'll be irritated, and that's destroying your inner peace.
Yeah.
So you're holding on to it.
It's not easy, and I think it is a process, and I think it does take time to unpack it.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the severity of what if it's someone else, if they're giving someone else what they've done,
There's levels to
There's
everything,
levels,
right?
of course. Yeah.
But when you're ready, it's possible, depending on what you make of it. I saw a clip, a YouTube short, and it was by a guy who had, it was a mass murder in America, one of the probably many of that. It's hard to say which one you're referring to now, unfortunately, because there's so fucking many. All the parents had their say in court. They got to deliver a message to the guilty guy in court, and everyone was calling him a piece of shit, and I hope you rot in hell, and all that kind of usual stuff, which is completely expected. But one guy said, I forgive you, not for you, but for me.
Yeah. Oof, that's powerful.
And he just walked off, and then that was what got the guy most upset, because I think he just thought, right, shit.
I felt emotion inside me then at that point. It was like, that's the one that's going to hit.
You've already caused me so much pain that I don't want you to cause me any more pain, was the general gist, is what I took out of that. So, it's not to say that, if your children are killed and, I forgive you straight away. Not about that. It's a process. It takes time. But equally, how long do you want to hold on to that for?
Forgiveness it's letting go. That's what it is. You're letting go of that thought that's not serving you, about the forgiveness of someone else, whether they've done bad to you, or if it's forgiveness of oneself, if you've done bad, if you've made an error or what else. That's it. It's the thought that's doing it.
Yeah.
And you're just deciding now to let go of it. But obviously not click of fingers, like you said. It can take a lot of time, a lot of processing. It brings it back to that Tony Robbins, it won't be peaceful, but it'll bring you peace eventually.
Yeah, because it's like, again, obviously, when you post things on the internet, anyone can make anything sound stupid. So if someone killed your whole family, mate, you're just going to forgive them. Well, there's equivalents of like stubbing your toe and then snapping your leg in 4 places. The recovery time is obviously going to be very different. I think it's different to the situation here too. But that was still pretty difficult to accept, I have to say. It took me a while, probably a year or so before I started doing my own coaching with my own sort of mindset coach, that I really got to unpack that and understand why it hurt so much. Because I thought, I'm giving to someone, I'm giving all of me in that moment, and you have turned around and done that. So I felt like the injustice and the pain and it was tough.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because like if you start bringing philosophy into this, it's like, okay, stoic philosophy, Zen philosophy, but forgiveness is a part of that philosophy. Because again, it's part of letting go. It's part of attachments, because if you're not going to forgive, then you're holding on to that attachment, and that attachment is not serving you. So it's a form of letting go. But yeah, it's a huge part of those two philosophies. Yeah. But like you said, it can take a lot. Depending on the severity of it, it can take a lot of time to process it. What's your thoughts on like forgiveness to oneself, to you, about a previous version of you? A mistake you made yesterday, for example.
When I reflected on this with Patrick, our coach, I said, in my 20s, I was just a fucking idiot. I said, okay. A fucking idiot. I said, it was not treating women badly, but it was one night stands. It was just being a fucking idiot, going out, getting drunk all the time, and, not giving my all to my career at certain points, and eating junk food, not exercising properly, and he said, okay, similar to what you said earlier about this woman, Adam, you're mistaken because you weren't well. I said, what do you mean? He's like, you weren't well. And what I'd realised was it was from so many years of being misunderstood. As early as I can remember, mate, 6, 7, 8, oh, he doesn't want to learn, he's a distraction. I do want to learn. I'm just finding it really challenging in school because of the dyspraxia and the ADHD that wasn't diagnosed. I felt misunderstood around my emotions. I felt misunderstood around who I was and all that kind of thing. So in my 20s, I tried to rectify that through drugs and alcohol, not loads of drugs to be fair, more alcohol, which I guess is still a drug, right? But through, all the other things that I'd mentioned to try feel good enough. So I do forgive and I do have empathy and compassion for little me because I was misunderstood. And I think that carried out into my 20s where, I wasn't well. A mentally well person doesn't drink that much alcohol and black out and, just treat their body like a dumpster fire.
But everyone's doing it. That's what we do in our 20s. That's what, students do at uni. Not all, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it wasn't like I was scrambling for empty cans of Carling and what have you. But when I was working down Core Lane especially, when you look at your day, people are coming in from other bars while you're setting up and you're chopping fruit and getting the music on and all the rest of it, getting the bar ready. People from next door, other bartenders come in 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Shot? Yeah. What? Someone else comes in from the bar next door after that on their break at 4:30. Couple of shots, mate? Yeah. You're doing shots at 3 p.m. Just it's just normal. That was just normal for me. So again, not torpedoing bottles of vodka and, doing cocaine off strippers or anything like that. But that behaviour in itself, getting out of bed at midday, 1 p.m, going to McDonald's to air quote sober up. You don't do that if you're mentally with it and you're well. You just don't. No. So I think you have to introduce that forgiveness and the compassion. What about you?
Very similar. Early 20s, mid 20s, even early 30s. Still, the drugs and everything else, the alcohol, getting absolutely hammered. But a mentally well person wouldn't do that. No. But I think what you were going to get to is you create compassion for your old identity, for younger you. Because I had a very similar thing with our coach as well, with Patrick. It's interesting, a very similar response. Oh, I was just a bit of an idiot. I did this, I did that. And I think his question was, and I use it with my clients, what would you say to 20-year-old you? He actually gets quite emotional because shit, what would you say? So now in my mind, I just create compassion for that person. And that compassion piece, again, that is part of philosophies and philosophy. And the meditation helps with everything else, but it's like, otherwise you can either, when you beat that person up, old version of you, you're beating yourself up, and that's a form of self-sabotage. It's a form of
self-harm.
Self-harm, that's the word I was looking for. And again, it's the thought that's doing it. So what's a more helpful thought, which is one of the best questions ever in coaching? Well, I was just doing the best. I wasn't well then. I was just doing the best that I could. I was getting knee-jerked around by everything external. Obviously, you didn't know that at the time, because I'm using words here that I didn't know that at the age of 20. But you just did the best you could at that time. That's it. And look at you are today.
If I had to speak to my 20-year-old self, I'd just say, you've got nothing to prove and you are more than good enough. And I think that alone, that permission to not have to perform and become this character or this avatar that people liked. Because when I started coaching, I'd get messages from people going, you've changed. And, I did this post a few weeks ago, and some of the responses I got were amazing. One person who was on our podcast quite a while ago, Laura Bartlett, she put, my response to this, thanks, you meant to. You've changed. Thanks. You meant to.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Brilliant.
Great response.
Yeah. Others were, like, thank you, just really simple. That's really kind of you. Because they mean it in a negative way.
Yeah.
You've changed, because they say it with that level of disdain, and the facial expression of being like almost like accusatory, like it's a problem. So now I just say to people, I know, I needed to.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I did. Yeah. Because if I didn't change, I genuinely think I could be dead. And I mean that. The amount of drinking on a weekend, the junk food, the smoking, the occasional drug taking, the late nights, the lack of exercise. I remember going to the doctors at one point, and he said to me, Mr. Smith, you are in the top 3 percentile in the UK of alcohol consumption. And being the misunderstood, if I'm being kind to myself, person at the time, I was like, I can't wait to tell the lads about this. I've never been in the top 3% for anything. It's not the best. This was when I was 31. I'm 35 now.
Yeah.
He said, if you keep drinking like this, you'll probably be dead by 40. I'm like, oh. And I'm like, fuck off. I know people that drink X, but that's how much it was. So while it wasn't every single day, all day, like I say, scrambling around in the dark, wanking into a hanky. Gentleman reference, the film The Gentleman, if you haven't seen it, it's brilliant. Hugh Grant's awesome. I wasn't scrambling around in the dark looking for the empty cans of Carling and, pouring fucking Baileys on my cornflakes. But when we were going big on a weekend, it was big. It was horrendous. Like, you'd be drinking the equivalent of maybe a bottle and a half of spirit, 6 or 7 beers, from the hours of 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. easily. So, yeah, I don't think many people would even survive that, never mind doing it most weekends.
No.
And that was on like a Saturday, and sometimes on a Friday you'd have a few too. So, yeah, it was bad, but it's imperative to create that compassion and that empathy and to grow and not look back and cringe. Oh, God, in 5 years, oh God, 5 years ago I was doing that. God, how cringe. Well, I'll probably cringe if I go with that mindset in 5 years from now.
Listening back to this podcast.
Listening back and go, oh, can you remember when you said that in that way and whatever? But that's part of growing. Imagine if you were just the same, or if you go back 5 years further than that, when I was, from 25, and then when I was 20, then when I was 15, oh, how embarrassing. I used to play PlayStation with my mates and go to a park. Go back 5 years after that. Remember when I used to watch Power Rangers? 5 years before that. Remember when I used to fucking, be laying in my shitty nappy? Like, how far do you want to go back, for example? You're supposed to evolve and change. That's the beauty of being a human being.
Before I move on to the next question, an important part of this is part of that self-compassion. It's about self-love. And we do this as coaches on our retreat, but also in coaching sessions as well, if it's needed at that time, is when we unravel the whole someone's not feeling good enough. Yeah. So it might be something that's happened at work or with their partner. And when they don't feel good that feeling of not feeling good enough, and it goes straight back to that younger self when something happened, when they were first told that you'll amount to nothing, or they were bullied on the school bus, or whatever it was, something happened where they developed that belief of not feeling good enough. And the activity that we do is we go into a deep meditation, lots of breathing, and then take them back to that earliest memory and change the story. And it may be something along the lines of older you going back to younger you, back to that earliest memory, and pulling younger you out of that situation, whether that was abuse at home, whether that was, like I said, a teacher saying something, a kid bullying you at school. You do it in the meditation and you walk through it, and you basically, older you today is going back to younger you, reliving it in your mind. It can be very emotional. Taking the hand of your younger self, moving out of it and saying everything's going to be okay and da-da-da-da-da. That, basically what you're saying is you have to say to your younger self that you love them. But then now you're telling yourself in present day that you love yourself. Yeah. Which is imperative. Because if you can't love yourself, you'll never love someone else as fully. That's to keep it. Yeah,
what's really interesting is seeing it from both sides at the moment, because I did that exact exercise with a current client of ours. His fear of stopping drinking alcohol was the fear of being neglected. And the fear of neglect, said, what's your earliest memory about the fear of being neglected and being ostracized? He's like, oh shit, I've no idea. So we did the meditation, but he went back to when he was about 7 or 8 years old. He went to like a birthday party at Pizza Hut, and people were basically picking on him. And I can't remember the exact insult, but they made him feel horrendous. He's like, you're telling me that that's the link? And I was like, it's where it began. I fully believe that's where it began. It's like an emotional anchor is what it's known as. So we did the exercise, and I said, imagine that little you is sat in Pizza Hut right now. Call them over as the adult now. And what would you say to, let's say the client's called Joe Bloggs. What would you say to little Joe? So I'd tell him it's going to be okay, and that he is loved and that he is enough. And he got really emotional. What's interesting is my nephew is 7, and I can see some of the words he uses towards himself so negative.
Even at 7.
At 7, yeah, and you hear it from other kids in the playground, that, you know, from what my brother says and what my mum says when they go pick him up from school and things like that. And so you can see that this is a belief now, that he believes he is this way about certain things. So I'm seeing it from the 7-year-old, and I'm seeing it from 45-year-old men who are healing their inner 7-year-old. So when people think, oh, this is a bit far-fetched, Adam, it's fucking not. It's not.
It is not, and it's playing out in your mind every single day.
Correct. So until you can
heal it,
until you can heal younger you by doing these kind of exercises and opening that door, it will set you free. And as we've said many times before, it won't be peaceful, but it will bring you peace. It's nail on the head, because otherwise you're going to carry on, and you're going to be at the same vulnerability level or lack of understanding around your emotional level as a 7-year-old. Because that's what you're being controlled by, and that's why it's imperative. We'll get into the questions.
How do you define peak performance?
The self-help, hustle bro kind of approach to this, I guess, would be to be performing at your highest level at all times. I don't really believe behind closed doors many actually are. I think there's always something. If you were to actually attach a camera to someone all day, even the ones that profess they've got it all figured out, I know that there'll be pockets of space where they're scratching their ass and sniffing it, or they didn't go to the gym, or they didn't prep that meal, or they didn't have their meditation practice nailed down this morning, whatever. So I think my interpretation for my own situation is aiming to perform at my highest levels as frequently as possible, but also being understanding and compassionate to myself when I don't attain it.
Love that. Yeah.
That's all part of peak performance, is also being able to forgive and to be compassionate and empathetic, not to the detriment and not to the point where I go, oh, it's okay, mate, you're tired today. Don't go to the gym. You know, intellectually, when you're absolutely fucked and you can't do any more, you know, deep down, you know. So you know when you've skipped it because you can't be arsed or because you watched Netflix too much the night before. But, okay, that's my reality. Like we said in the previous episodes, how can I make my next decision better? How can I make that one a healthier option? What about you?
I define peak performance as someone who applies the highest standards to a activity. And I know obviously peak performance is bringing it into the world of coaching, but like, for example, an athlete, Usain Bolt, peak performance for him is the 100 meters and getting that time. That's all he needs to be concerned about, is crossing that finish line and getting it in a better time. Do you know what I mean? But he might not have high performance, I don't know, with something else. Do you know what I mean?
You might really messy at home, for instance.
Yeah, you just don't know. I don't know. But like, there's that about the highest standards for a single thing or an activity. But also for me, it's living virtuously. So I bring in the stoic philosophy, Because if you're living virtuously, that'll help you to get peak performance. Because obviously you've got wisdom, temperance, courage, and applying all the virtues to your life will help you attain peak performance. Yeah. I think a lot of it is just get your fucking shit together. Summarize it. Get your shit together.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a messy house, that'll tell me a lot about what's going on in your mind and how you play out the rest of your day. If I just came and looked at your house, I know I'd judge immediately, and people go, "Oh, I've got kids." No, your kids are messy because you're messy.
Yeah.
I know that I can confidently say that now because I'm seeing it in my children. Because I've got minor OCD. I like everything to be clean and tidy.
That's just a label, though. You could also say I'm just organised and clean.
That's the other label, yeah, of course. Yeah, I know I'm labelling it as minor OCD, but I just like to be clean and have some structure. You either have order or chaos, and I like to have some form of order. Of course there's chaos that happens in my house. Of course there is. There's tantrums and everything else. But I like to have some form of order. And it's not necessarily a control thing. It's just, well, if not, there's going to be chaos. And I don't like chaos.
No. Then your day becomes chaotic, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, there's that famous speech by the former Navy SEAL or Colonel, I can't remember what level he was at, but, you know, make your bed. And the importance of making your bed. And obviously, the internet does its thing, and then people just, you know, they're in a council flat and they'll make the bed and they'll make parodies of it, you know, and other people will be making the bed, and then, you know, there's like TikTok trends around it, right? Just ridiculous. But some guy put the other day, I don't make my bed, I check emails in my, you know, bed, I do this. I'd listed all the opposite of what I would consider to be someone that's got the shit together. He said, but I run a multi-six-figure business. But then you look at his profile, and again, not attacking him, it didn't look very healthy, if I'm being kind. He probably looked about 3 or 4 stone overweight. He had massive bags under his eyes. He looked knackered. And I thought, well, make the bed. No, it doesn't define your success, but it's the first thing. It's the first task of the day, and it's a standard. Because I looked at this guy and I thought, I bet you don't put the trolley back in the car park. I bet you don't clean away your rubbish when you go to McDonald's. I bet you don't do anything like that. These little litmus tests. I bet if you took your dog out for a walk and there was no one else around and did a shit on the floor, I bet you're not picking it up because that's your standard. If you just applied some of the business acumen that he obviously has to the day-to-day stuff, you will become a better man.
Yeah.
So it's not that making the bed defines you or it puts you into a bracket of loser or successful, but that will spill out in how you communicate with your children. It will spill out as to how organised you are, whether you are exercising correctly, how good your health is. Because yes, there will be very, very successful people out there that are in great shape, that are happily married, and some of them may or may not make the fucking bed. It's not the point. It comes down to standards. It's like how, you know, not how clean's your car on the outside, but how clean's your car on the inside. It tells you a lot about that person as well, I feel.
Yeah.
It's a standard.
Standard.
So what standards do you want to set?
It's the resilience piece as well. So who are you going to be when the adversity hits that? And can you maintain that level of standard when something really shit happens? Or are you just going to drop all your values, all your morals and all your standards? And it could be really emotional, of course. But I think that plays a part as well in the peak performance. So if it is a bit of a shit day, not a shit day, but a shit moments in the day, or if you didn't sleep well the night before for whatever reason, maybe you've only had 5 hours sleep, you might not be able to maintain that full levels of high performance or peak performance, no. But it's the whole like car analogy. When you burst a tire, are you going to get out of the car and burst the other 3? No, don't make it any worse than what it already is. That's your reality right now. This is what it is.
Yeah, it's one of our mantras, isn't it? How we do anything is how we do everything.
Exactly.
Whether that's onboarding a new client or whether it's going to the gym. If you want to be a high performer or a peak performer in this case, as it pertains to the question, you have to do that.
Yeah.
Depending on whether it's Usain Bolt for the 100 meters or whether it is just being the father or the mother while simultaneously running the business and all that, but you don't have to operate at Usain Bolt levels in every single area all the time.
No.
But if you want to achieve success in a certain thing, then you need to push yourself, you need to go for it. Hope you guys have found value in that. Please like, subscribe, follow. Comment below as well with what you found valuable today and any questions that you do have around future topics. If you want to find out more information around us or join our community, go to school.com/agame. That is SKOOL.com/agame, and we'll see you next time.